All right, we're here in section 5.4. In this section, we're going to be working on what's called completing the square. As you might have figured out that, well, some and many quadratic equations have expressions that you can't really factor, okay? They don't work to do it that way. And graphing is always a great idea on how to do that. But here's another method, and that'll help us down the road when we get into conic sections, those things as we move down the road in math. So, it's not necessarily the greatest method in the world, but it's one that it's good to introduce now so that we have some familiarity to it. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be trying to find, using square roots is kind of what we're doing. And we know if x squared equals 15, taking the square root, we get the plus or minus. We get two of them. We get positive root 15 and negative root 15. Now, if that's a perfect square, we certainly want to find it, but in many cases it's not. So again, remember we have two answers when we take the square root. So when we get something like this, what we want to do is get the x squared by itself. So we'd have 4x squared is equal to 48. Divide by 4, we'd get x squared is equal to 12. So take the square root of both sides would be plus or minus the square root of 12. Now, if you're one of those people like me who likes to simplify radicals, the square root of 12 could be thought of as 4 times 3, in which case we could take the square root of 4, so we could think of it as plus or minus 2 root 3. That's fine. I don't know how picky we're necessarily going to be, but be ready if you get an answer like this, and if it's a multiple choice, you don't see it, you understand it might need to be simplified, and so you might have to do a little work on that. We'll have to see how that goes. Okay. All right, let's try another one here. Now, this is a nice, interesting thing here is that we talked about this from last section, is that this is a perfect square trinomial. In other words, when I factor this, two numbers that multiply to 36 but add to 12 are 6 and 6. So I could think of this as x plus 6 times x plus 6. And that equals 28. Sorry about that, 6 there. All right, well, I can rewrite this. This is really thought of as x plus 6 squared. Something times itself is squared, right? Okay, well, now we can do is take the square root of both sides. And so we'd have x plus 6 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 28. Well, getting the x by itself, we'd subtract the 6. And if you wanted to, you could still leave it as, plus or minus the square root of 28. We usually like to simplify those. We'd go negative 6 plus or minus. Now, 28 is the same thing as 4 times 7. So negative 6, we'd go plus or minus. The square root of 4 is 2. So we'd have 2 root 7. That'd be the most simplified way. In most cases, I'd be okay with you leaving like this. But again, in multiple choice settings, you got to be ready to use it in either form. Be ready. Most of the time, you'll see it simplified, though. All right, let's try another one of those. Now, once again, you see that this is a perfect square trinomial. Okay, what two numbers multiply to 16 but add to 8? Well, we know that would be x plus 4 and x plus 4. Yeah, that would work. And that equals 49. All right, so this could be thought of as x plus 4 squared. And that's going to equal 49. So we want to take the square root of both sides. When we do that, we get x plus 4 equals, now this is a perfect square, so we get plus or minus 7. All right, so then x would be negative 4 plus or minus 7. So there's two answers. Don't leave it like that. We take negative 4 plus 7, that's going to be 3. Negative 4 minus 7 would be negative 11. Those would be your two answers that we get there. Okay, so again, that's kind of the completing the square method, and I know what you're thinking. You're not always going to get a perfect square trinomial. So what do? Well, you do a method called completing the square. And so what you do is you figure out you have the x squared plus 6x. What you do to find which number completes the square is you're going to take half of the b value. Okay, so whatever that b value is 6, b is of course the number in front of the x, so you take half of it, which is 3, and you square it. That number will complete the square, and it can be written as x plus 3 squared. It's kind of a slick little strategy that we can use when doing that. Let's try some and see how it works. Let's practice a little bit first on how this goes. We have x squared minus 14x. So what we're going to do is we're going to take half of 14, which is 7, and square it. So 49. What you're going to see is this is always going to be positive because we're squaring the number. Now, what is the binomial squared? Well, it's going to be x, and if this number is negative, it's going to be negative there. Remember, it's the square root of that 49, it's the 7 squared. X minus 7 squared is what that is. Okay. All right, let's try another one. Ooh, a little tricky one here. X squared plus 9, half of 9 is 4.5. 4.5 squared, I believe, is 20.25 is what that is. That completes the square. So what we have here is we're going to have x plus 4.5 squared. Put the point there, sorry about that. That's how we write the binomial squared. Because once we get it as the binomial squared, we can take the square root of both sides. So that's going to be that method of completing the square. And a little easier one here this time. Half of -4 is -2. Squared is 4. That completes the square. And our binomial squared would be x minus 2 squared. 2 squared, okay? Remember, whatever this number is here, or whatever that sign is, that's going to be the same sign there. So if it's negative, put a negative. If it's positive, put a positive. All right. So let's put it all together. Some notes on how to do it. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to get all the variables to one side. So first of all, here's what we're going to do. We're going to set it up. We're going to go x squared. Let's move that over, make that a -12x plus blank. We're going to leave that -20 on the other side. And since I'm adding a blank on this side, I better add that same blank on the other side. All right, so we got to figure what number completes the square. Half of -12 is -6. Squared is 36. If I add it to one side, I got to add to the other. That keeps it balanced. This we can rewrite as x minus 6 squared. This would be 16. Square root both sides. X minus 6 is equal to plus or minus 4. So x would be 6 plus or minus 4. So you have two answers. 6 plus 4 is 10. 6 minus 4 is 2. Those are your two solutions. Okay. If it's not a perfect square, yeah, leave it in radical form. It's fine, and it'll be good. But make sure we always clear those out if we can. All right. Now, we can also do this. One of the things we like is being able to put it in vertex form, because if we can do it in this form, we know that the vertex is HK. That's what we want to do. So we can put it in that form by using the completing the square method. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Do the completing the square method. We're going to go x squared. Let's go plus 16x plus blank equals. Now we're going to throw that -12 to the other side of the equal sign. I'm just reversing it a little bit. So we're going to put it turns into positive 12, and then we're going to add the same thing. So what number completes the square? Half of 16 is 8. 8 squared is 64. So we're going to add 64 to both sides. So x squared, I'm sorry, whoopsie. That's going to rewrite as x plus 8 squared equals 76. Bring it over to the other side now. We're not trying to find the zeros. We're trying to put it in vertex form. So we bring that back over to the other side. X plus 8 squared minus 76 equals 0. That's in vertex form. Remember, the vertex then is the opposite of this number. So it's going to be -8. And whatever that number is, that's the y value, -76. So that's how you can find the vertex. That's vertex form. Kind of crazy kooky, but true. Let's try another one where we do that. All right, so once again, we're going to get the variables on one side. So let's have the x squared plus 24x plus blank equals. Now we're going to throw that -145 to the other side and add that same blank. Now half of 24 is 12. 12 squared is 144. So let's add that to both sides and then simplify. This can be rewritten as x plus 12 squared. That works out nice. That's just a -1 on this side. So let's bring that over. X plus 12 squared, sorry about that, plus 1 equals 0. So our vertex is going to be -12 and +1. That's going to be the vertex that we get as we do that. All right, there you go. A lot to throw at you right there, but that's how she does it, completing the square method. All right. Well, that's all.